And we're live. Excellent. So welcome to DA Student Wellbeing channel. I'm Jason. You met me earlier in the week. This evening, 4 o'clock. Well, feels like evening.
Evening-ish.
We've been here all morning, all afternoon, probably now in evening. Anyways, we've got Brian Costello on, who is the founder of Headstrong and an expert in all things mental health. So really excited to have Brian on today. He's going to speak to us about the topic of how to fix your mental health without taking loads of drugs. Lovely, lovely title. So just a couple of housekeeping things first, and I'm really keen to get Brian to tell you a bit about himself and that type of thing. So housekeeping, guys, I know it's 4 o'clock. You might still be in lessons. You might be watching this from the other side of the world. It might just not be the right time for you right now. You can watch this on catch up anytime you want. Stays on the page. Watch it at your own leisure. However, if you are making a comment, can you just put #replay in the comments so that we know when we're looking through them that it wasn't live at the time when you made the comment? They're really helpful. Nice one. I actually stole that off Brian because he's done that on his lives before. So.
It's okay. I would say inspired, mate. That's what I would say. You were inspired by it. You modelled it like an expert. That's what it was.
Inspired plagiarism.
Absolutely. That's what it is.
So, myself and Brian have known each other now, for 7 years, 6, 7 years?
I have not been counting, mate, but it's longer than I ever remember. That's it. You've just been about now, I've been trying to get ready for it. No, I'm all joking. No, absolutely. I think it is about 6, 7 years now. Yeah. I think we first met. If I'm right, our first meeting, I think I stuck an arrow in your throat and made you walk over hot coals in your bare feet. If I'm
accurate, yeah. And I've actually got the video to prove it as well.
Absolutely, that's because that's how I roll. That's what we do.
I think the title grabbed me. Fire walk in the dark somewhere near Glasgow. I think that the advert grabbed me, and that was it. I was sold, and never looked back. So in all seriousness, I'm also an NLP coach as well, and I do subcontract stuff for Headstrong, and not bad. I do a little bit anyway. Not any complaints.
Absolutely. You do very well. Don't you start discounting yourself in front of these students and telling them you're all shite when you're not. We have started swearing already. That's terrible. It's only 3 minutes past 4. There could be kids watching. That'd be the last swear word, I promise, before watershed.
I was just about to tell you off. But anyway, right, let's get marching on. So we are going to be talking today about let's tell people what you do. So what is it you do?
Yeah, so what we do at Headstrong, in fact, let me give you a tiny wee bit of background. When I first started learning all this stuff, I tripped into it all by accident. I'm not sitting here talking to people as someone who had this plan when he was 15 that he would go into like personal development or anything like that. I was 30 years old and I was doing okay, but there was a lot of things around that doing okay that on the surface it would have looked as if I was doing okay. But when she started digging in behind, there was a lot of stuff behind it that wasn't going too well. Just in terms of I was probably drinking a wee bit too much. I was smoking. I didn't really believe in myself. I had low confidence. And then all of a sudden what happened is that I went into this course, and all of a sudden everything shifted and everything changed. And the reason it changed is because I always thought that in order to get help, you had to drag yourself through your past, or that you were stuck, in some way. That's basically how I was, that I was jammed, that this was who I was going to be forever. And actually, for the first time, somebody showed me that I wasn't like that, and that it didn't need to be like that, and actually that change could be dead easy. And as soon as I came off that course, I went, that's what I want to do for a job. Whatever it is that guy is doing that's teaching me, I want to do what he does. And now that's what we do, although I would say we probably do better than him, but that's by the way. But what that means is that we help people change easily. We have one of the ways that I say it all the time is we have positive conversations around mental health. That might come out as we go through, so we can talk about very serious topics without having to be super serious all the time. That we we make it fun, we make it engaging, we make it interesting, and we show people that actually the process of change doesn't have to involve tons and tons of tears, or as the title of this is tons and tons of drugs. That actually your mind is changing all the time, and if you understand how it's changing, then you can make that shift. So we call that the mechanics of mind. So it's like understanding the mechanics of your mind, and then all of a sudden you start to understand how and why things happening. Whereas a lot of other therapies sometimes delve themselves into, let's talk about your childhood and your school years and intricate details. You cry.
I mean, that part there is really, it takes in the way it's intended, Brian, but you don't strike me as what I have an image in my head of a counsellor. Do you know what I mean? Like, my traditional view of what a counsellor might look like doesn't look like Brian Costello.
I need to be wearing a cardigan.
Okay, watch a bit more often. I don't know, but that's the idea that people create. I'm not saying that's what counsellors are like at all, by the way. I'm just saying that's the illusion we've created in our heads, is that it's going to be a certain way. And I think what you're saying there, having a positive conversation around mental health, I absolutely love that, because there is this stigma around, it's a shameful thing to not be well in your mental health, but actually if you're ill physically, then people want to help you or help you get better. So to me, it's a similar thing with your mental health, and having these positive conversations around it. It's okay not to be okay type thing. I think it's going to encourage more people to want to talk about it as opposed to try and hide it.
Well, that's it. I mean, ultimately, I think a lot of people are scared off therapy because of that traditional view of how it's been. We've grown up, even in certain modern TV shows, the way that therapy is shown doesn't paint it in a great light. It paints it as difficult and challenging. There was that program on Sky a few years ago, where it was like Daniela Westbrook and was it Freddie Starr or somebody like that, Bobby Davro or somebody, and they sat down with that therapist in London. She actually asked some really good questions, but all she did was ask questions, and she just made them cry. For me, I actually really liked her. I thought that some of the questions, they were brilliant. They were really cutting they cut through a lot of stuff. She was very intuitive, but at no time was the solution ever given. It was just this person going deeper and deeper into exploration. And that for me isn't useful. I think what is much more useful is getting into a place where let's understand why you feel the way you feel. So if you're anxious, what is it that your mind is doing? Like if I'm sitting in a car and I'm anxious about a night out, that for me, there's a mechanic going on there. And what I mean by that is that I'm not in the night out, but I'm already anxious. So something's going on in that moment inside my mind that's making me anxious in the car because I'm not already at the night out, if that makes sense. So if I can understand what that is and switch that off, that anxiety disappears. And I know we'll get into this later on,
brilliant.
But it's just like I think too much counselling goes backwards, basically, and spends too much time looking back.
Well, what I was going to say there, the perfect opportunity was, I don't know if you've looked at our Facebook page today, but I've actually...
only just before we come on there, and by the way, for everybody that's watching, from personal recommendation, I've never done one with this lady, but a sound bath is amazing. Get your headphones on at 7 o'clock. I'm going to be on another live at 7 o'clock, so of course you'll be watching me later on twice in one day, but get your headphones on. Sound baths are incredible, so get that experience. But no, sorry, what else is on there?
Brian's like the king of tangents, and so am I, so we might go...
Yeah, we have to be careful.
I've brought my pen and paper, so it's fine, I keep you on track. What was I actually going to say there? Yes, if you look at the Facebook page today, you're going to have seen there's like a 6-minute video of you talking about social anxiety, and it was that exact thing about going on the night out and have the social anxiety. So if anybody was wanting to see a bit more of that, there's a whole video on the page. It was 6.5 minutes long that talks about that, which is absolutely brilliant. Also, Brian, I'm going to be really honest with you now. I just did the typical human behaviour whilst you were telling that story about Danielle Westbrook and whatever, and I just pretended I knew what you're talking about. Never seen the programme. Don't even know what you're on about.
I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called In Therapy or something like that. And they go into this wee room and they're kind of videoed, and it's very intimate. It's like she does that therapist look.
Yeah.
She squints her head and she goes, Well, I don't know. That's something that you think. You know, and you can see them going, well, I don't know. And it's like, she puts them on the spot. But I mean, I didn't like it all. It's not my type of therapy. It's not my style. I'm much more into solutions.
Yes.
So if I can work out what the mechanics is, or the mechanics are of how someone gets anxious, I don't then just give them a high five and then go, isn't that brilliant? Now you know how you make yourself anxious. Well done. Isn't that good? What I want to do is then show them how to change it so that by the time they've finished, they're no longer anxious. And I'm not talking about managing it. I'm not talking about counting to 10. I'm not talking about, you know, any other strategy like that where we just manage it. I'm talking about if I can get you there, which maybe 80%, maybe even 90% of people, that we can get them to this very point where it becomes history. It genuinely is something that you used to do, and it's gone. And that for me is therapy. Everything else is just talking about your problems.
That's the exciting part, and that's what we're going to get into today then. So the question is then, you get a lot of people go about then with mental health problems, and they genuinely believe that they're broken, okay? Yep. So I'd just like to ask you that question then. Are these people broken? Can they be fixed if they are broken? What's your take on that?
There's a simple answer to that. I was almost going to give a cheeky answer, but I was worried that somebody might switch off after I was cheeky, you know, and then go, see, that guy said, take me out of context. So I'm not going to say what I was going to say. But so the simple answer is no. There are very few mental health issues that are, as I would call them, like wiring problems, like proper psychological issues. Or psychiatric issues, sorry, I should say. Most issues are psychological, in that we learn to have them. So, for instance, schizophrenia is a psychiatric issue. So, therefore, there is an issue there with the way that the brain is wired and the way that the brain is working. Bipolar. I've got to admit, I've worked with a few people who are bipolar, and we've managed to get really good results with their symptoms. But bipolar is actually a psychiatric issue. It tends to be genetic. They've proven a genetic link, but that does not mean that it has to be as extreme as sometimes it is. I still believe that can be helped. Maybe not completely taken away, but it can be helped. But almost anything else, an addiction, for instance, I don't believe that an addiction is an illness. I don't think it's a disease. Depression, I don't think it's an illness. I don't think it's a disease. It can feel like it and the reason that it feels like it is because people think that their mental health is an outside-in process, if that makes sense. So it can feel as if our mental health is happening to us. Is as if, you know, I just woke up one morning and I felt rubbish. When actually, if you track it back, that's not actually the case. Like, you felt rubbish for the last 3 years. It was just that you woke up that morning and finally it really dipped, you know, over the edge. But actually, this had been coming for a long while. You know, anxiety doesn't just come out of nowhere. And the reason for that, I think we're probably going to explore this as we go through, is that because mental health is actually an inside-out process. So what I mean by that is it's all about the meaning that we put on things. So that video, in fact, that you talked about earlier with me talking about the night out, that is part of as well, just if anybody's interested, that's part of a bigger video that's on our Headstrong YouTube page. That's the word I was looking for. That you can go and watch. It's part of a bigger one that's all about anxiety. But that's a classic thing. And that's all about meaning. It's all about the meaning I put in things. So me and you and I could be going on a night out. We could both say, wouldn't that be amazing? If we just could, we could just go, do you want to go for a beer? Why don't we? Like soon perhaps. So you and I could be going for a beer to the same pub to meet the same people, but because of the meaning that we put on it, we could be having two very, very different experiences. You know, you could be thinking that you're super excited and that you're really keen to go and that you can't wait to be there. Whereas the meaning I put on it is, you know, these three guys that I'm going out with are all much better looking than me, or they dress better than me. Oh, no, I'm going to look like a right idiot, you know, standing next to them. And because that meaning I put on it, that then starts to produce anxiety. And that's the inside out process. It's not the night out that's causing me anxiety. It's what I think about it. And the easiest way to think about that is by adding one word onto whatever mental health problem it is that you're dealing with. So if it was something like the night out, it's like, I don't like going on nights out is where people normally end it. I just don't like going on nights out. Why not? Because they make me anxious. And the word that I want people to add on to that is because. I don't want to go on nights out because it makes me anxious, because I worry that people will be looking at me and they'll laugh at me. And that answer is where it's coming from, but we'll talk about that a wee bit later. So the reason that people think they're broken is basically because they look outside themselves and they go, I can't control this, or even when I don't go on the night out, I still get anxious, or even when I don't drive my car, I still get anxious, or when I don't go to college, I still get anxious, or when I don't have any exams, I still get anxious, and they think, see, my brain must be broken because I must be crazy, but it's just that they're looking in the wrong place.
So
does that make sense?
That makes complete sense to me. And it's like I'm thinking to myself then, well, if that's the approach, then do people not just push on through? Just, just for, like, kind of mask it.
Put the brave face on.
The brave face on, yeah, and just go on, like, go on through. Is one way of dealing about it, I suppose. And I think a lot of people do that, especially with, I'll go into about online learning at the moment. Everybody's got a face for online at the moment, but they might be sat there with their shorts on and a really nice T-shirt, for example.
Yes,
I won't ask you to stand up, mate, honestly, if I
ask you to stand up, mate, you won't like what you see. They're frilly and they still have Santa on them. I don't know why. It's been a long day. We should have done this earlier in the day. This is just too random. Yeah,
my point is. Go on, mate. I was going to say that the point of that is there. I keep talking over you, but can you essentially just mask this stuff that's going on in your head and be the happy, outgoing person that you want to be, or that you think people want them to see? Okay. Is that an approach?
Yeah, you can, but you'll be knackered. And by the way, apologies to anybody watching this. There's obviously a wee delay between Jason and I, so I think we both keep on trying to go into the gap, and the other one's filled it. So apologies for that. But anyway. You can, but you'll be knackered. So there is a certain amount where fake it till you make it can be sometimes very useful. It's not without its merits. Like if someone, like, here's a classic example: somebody that does something like, is normally very shy, but what they do is they love to sing. And when they sing, they absolutely love it, or they do something like that. They put themselves up on a stage, that type of thing. Let's just go with singing. And then what happens is they sing, and they seem super confident. And when you ask them about it, they go, "Oh yeah, but that's just me putting the mask on." But actually, it's not. That's them. That's them that's doing that. They have that confidence within them. What they're doing in that moment is they're allowing it out, because normally what they do is they hide it, more than likely, again, because of a because reason. So I don't want people to think that I'm a big head. I don't want people to think that, I'm just the best singer, because I don't think like that at all. Constantly qualifying themselves. When they come back off stage, and they go, "My God, that was amazing." They go, "Oh no, I'm pure rubbish." And they're not being falsely modest. They might actually be genuinely worried that you think that they think that they're brilliant. And so there's certain places, therefore, where that fake it till you make it is something that we all have to do. Sometimes we just have to be in situations, and in fact, if I give that a wee bit wider context, one of the things that we talked about this, in fact, when we first met, this is part of the firewalking seminar, the kind of walking on hot coals thing. People think that confidence means that you're never scared. But actually what confidence is about being scared and being able to do something anyway. And sometimes that means that you have to put a face on. The problem with that is that you can only hold that for so long before it will tire you out. And if it's a really big thing where you're hiding something like anxiety or depression or a big social anxiety or a worry, or you're trying to hold yourself back from being who you really are, eventually you'll start to crack. And you can't hold it forever. The whole purpose of fake it till you make it is be confident until you become confident. But if you're just constantly faking it, you said something really interesting there just before you kind of at the end of that question, which is be who you think people want you to be. Yeah. That, for instance, is one of the most difficult things to do. And if you've ever been part of a friend group or a social group or maybe even in work where that's been asked of you, it is so difficult to maintain for any length of time. the better thing to do and the more freeing thing is to say, this is who I am. But that takes vulnerability and acceptance and to a certain degree, a level of confidence. And can I just add in there before I hand back to you? The who you are, anybody watching this is not to go, oh, well, I can't show everybody that because who I am is just somebody who's totally depressed, or I'm just somebody who's totally anxious. That is not you. That is a part of you, yes, but it's just there for a protection thing. You are also that person who is confident, who loves to sing, who loves to be friendly, who loves to socialize, who loves to run, who loves to stay fit, who loves to make food. You're not just your mental health issue. You're many, many other things. And when I mean just be yourself, I'm talking about being all of those things, not just the one part that you put all your focus on.
I think that's brilliant. That phrase that I love to hear as well, especially for young people, is, be yourself because everybody else is taken. It's such a true phrase. It's like, and I don't mind sharing a little bit, about my backstory from a few years ago, because it really, what you're saying there really touches upon my exit from the corporate world and my entry into self-employment and then into, an education role now as well, within Dundee and Angus College. And it was getting to the point, I think, and, it kind of creeps up in you that you're doing a lot of things in work in my previous role that I wasn't enjoying anymore. And I think it was a lot to do with the fit and a lot to do with identity. I wanted to be a lot freer than maybe that role was allowing me to be at the time. But looking back, in terms of being grateful, I'm very grateful for the time that I've spent there, because it's similar to your background. I know you worked for one of the corporate companies prior to setting your own business as well. It gives you a great grounding, and it's not to be, to be sort of turn your nose up at. It's been a great experience. However, I kind of outgrew that in a way and needed to go out and become myself and fulfill what it was I wanted to do and be in line with my values and identity. Because I know we've kind of roundabout way mentioned values there, but I was being almost like dragged one way, but internally I was being told to be another way. And it was like, what compass do I follow? And I've just been true to myself, being myself, and I've ended up in a roundabout way, I suppose, where I want to be. But it was a deliberate, unconscious choice. Does that make sense?
It does. And when you think about it, like, I bet you that most people that are watching this will know at least one person who is living the life that you and I both were back there. And that doesn't mean that self-employment is the answer for them. But, as Jason hinted at there, as you hinted at me, I was working for Barclays. I was working for the big bank. And I was hating it. I was absolutely hating it. I was getting paid good money. And I had a bit of status, the job carried with it a good job title. I was sort of absolute classic sort of middle management in my office, so I was, I definitely wasn't one of the top guys, but, I'd been there a few years and I was one of the people who had seen as a reward for hard work, but I wasn't enjoying it. It was absolutely 100% against all my values. Everything that I was being asked to do, who I was being asked to be, I was being asked and I know this is a thing that a lot of people have, I was being asked to make money for and I'm talking, when I say money, I was getting asked to save hundreds and thousands of pounds, not hundreds of thousands, but hundreds and thousands of pounds for a company that were making billions of pounds of profit.
Yeah.
And I was being tasked with cutting things and making things nicer and
the guy.
and it was just like, oh man, I just couldn't see the point. I couldn't see the purpose, when actually we could make life easier by going the opposite way, by spending a bit of money. We could go this way, and it was, oh well, that's not in the budget. Where's the data? The data doesn't back up that spend. And I'm like, it's like 20 grand and it would make all of these people's jobs easier. No, it's too expensive. We can't do that. And it's like, it just totally grated against me. At the end, especially because I was at that point obviously fairly heavily involved in personal development. I always make the joke that I would have stood out less if I walked in every day like dressed like a proper circus clown. If I would have stood out less if I came in with a big red wig on and a big red nose on and big size 25 shoes, because I just stood out, especially in the team that I was in.
Yeah.
It just didn't fit anymore. But I know of people who have done this. The natural thing to do is suck it up, because you wait for a job like that. That's the type of thing you should do, you know, is get a sensible job in a bank and just keep going. And what we both did, I suppose, and both got to the point, was that our values were more important, our identity was more important. And it was the best decision I ever made. And I bet, as I say, that we all probably know someone that's living that life where they're trying so hard to be someone that they don't necessarily want to be, because somebody else has told them, you know. A small soapbox moment, as you know, mate, I do a lot of work in schools, and one of the things that happens quite often is we get a lot of school leavers these days that are going for a sensible job. But I'm passionate about, for instance, music, or I'm passionate about sport or fitness, or I'm passionate about whatever it is, but I'm not going to do that because there's not a good job at the end of it. And it's like,
that's
you know what? This is an age where you get an opportunity at the moment before things happen to really follow your passions. And who knows what if? And I think sometimes that is the first decision, or the first step on a road that takes you to where Jason and I, and where you and I were. You know, we make a wrong decision at 17. We keep on going on, oh, this is what I should do, but it's not what you want to do. And you end up going down a line, you know. Sorry for kind of keeping talking.
This is really good, because it's giving people an insight into, I suppose, I have to be really honest as well. Like, you know, you would say you walked away from Barclays, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, I left in 2007. Yeah.
Whereas I was, put hands up. I probably didn't have the guts to walk away from my company at the time, even though I was quite unhappy, because it was good money, good perks, all the rest of it. But there was continuing restructures. So I was given the opportunity to leave, or not, depends how you look at it. Redundancy kind of happens to you. And that was my experience. And you go through the whole kind of curve of, like, I think it's like to the grief curve, actually. You know, you go through anger, resentment, acceptance, all this stuff. And actually, at the end of it, it was a really unique opportunity to go in, a little bit of cash in my pocket, to go and set myself up in a new business. And at that time, it was like, not self-employed, fully for me. No one's going to be my boss anymore, that type of thing. But actually, as you know, Brian, because you did a bit of coaching with me around this, my values elicitation in particular, actually, at that time, I needed a level of security, which full self-employment wasn't able to offer me. So I was looking for some sort of combination of employment and self-employment, which was an interesting thing to discuss, really.
That's a really interesting thing, though, isn't it, mate? I mean, I think this is something that everybody needs to understand as well from a mental health perspective, because I know that not everybody watching this will be 16, 17, 18. You know, there'll be some people who are older. These values obviously change. You know, if I rewind you back maybe 2-3 years, if you rewound me back 3 years to 2004, I left, as I say, in 2007, you'd find a guy that was super happy. I mean, I was delighted. I was loving it, you know, and I'd just done the course on an NLP, so I'd started my kind of understanding of the mind and personal development. I was loving it, but I was nowhere near ready for self-employment. Even though at that point I was already talking about it, I knew I wasn't quite set. And I was loving working in Barclays, and it was paying me a good salary. I had 2 young kids, blah, 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 blah. We have to accept that our values are changing all through our lives. And therefore, from a mental health perspective, our mental health kind of changes all the way through our lives. We can't just say, this is what I'm doing. Fine, that's what I'm doing. Some people are fortunate enough to do that. You know, like I left school at 16. I wanted to be an engineer. I went and got an apprenticeship. I retired at 58 when I was an engineer, you know, and that was fine. That straight line is exceptionally rare. And I think a lot of people from a mental health perspective think that they can make a set of decisions, get themselves into a place, and then stop making decisions. And that's not the case at all. This kind of comes back to that push through thing. You have to be constantly evaluating and have the courage to go, okay, I've done this for 10 years. I've invested a lot of time, effort, energy into this. And now it's done. And now it's time for me to go and find something else, whatever that thing may be. You know, I worked from 16 to 26. I was in catering, always wanted to be a chef when I was younger. I worked in catering, and I worked in loads of pubs, restaurants, all of these different things. But when I found out that I was going to be a dad at 26, at that point, almost immediately, it was like, boom, values shifted, time to go. And that was the story that then led to Barclays in the end. So I think if you can't keep on looking back and going, but I was happy 2 years ago. This was what I wanted to do when I left school. You might be 22 now and have a kid, and if that's the case, your values shift, and maybe working in sport and fitness because of the time, if that's what you wanted to do, or being a hairdresser doesn't suit you anymore. And it's about having that courage to be able to go, I need to go a different direction. And
oh, you're frozen a bit up, Brian. Oh, you're back.
No, oh, did I disappear?
You're back. Yeah, I've got two devices here, guys. If you ever see me looking off to the left, what I'm doing is I'm looking at the phone. So you're absolutely fine. Carry on, Brian.
No problem. All right, I can see myself because I've got the same, so I can see myself frozen down here.
It's a great face, though, mate. It's a really
it was a good frozen face. I have to always be careful. But yeah, so it's like it's about making good decisions, and you can't stop making mental of.
I'm on a few technical issues here. I can see Brian on one device, but he'll go to log back in on his 4G. He's just said there. So yeah, it was quite interesting to see that that myself and Brian had. He's going to come back in a minute, by the way. Quite similar backgrounds, and they were both sort of corporate, full-time employed corporate employees, and then we decided through one way or the other to kind of like follow our passion, which for me was at first just to be my own boss, just to be self-employed, just to be doing something that I wanted to do every day. And then as I went through and realized my values more and more, I realized that I needed the level of security, like I was saying, and that led me to take on employment with the college. So once Brian comes back on, we're going to get back on track in relation to this topic of how do I fix my mental health without taking loads of drugs. Now, I'm going to get Brian back on when he does come back on, which will be any minute. And I'm going to go right back in with those questions because I want to understand what Brian actually means by drugs. Is he talking about, medication that the doctor's prescribed? Is he talking about recreational drugs? Is he talking about, food? Is he talking about cigarettes? Is he talking about alcohol? What kind of drugs is Brian talking about? So once he comes back on, which we're hoping will be any minute, we can kind of get back into the topic. But the last question I was asking him was, can I just push through my mental health problems? And I think there's going to be a lot of you sat there just now doing exactly that. So I think what we're going to get Brian into next is, in fact, here he is. Here he is. I don't know what one to bring up, Brian. I think you're on two devices.
So now I can see you, mate, but I can't hear you.
Hear me?
Unfortunately. Give me a wee second. It could be me.
I can hear you loud and clear. I don't know if that helps because you can't hear me.
No, there's no sound. Give me a second. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, give me a tip.
I'll put thumbs up. So everybody can hear you.
I'm going to jump out and jump back in. Sorry about this, man.
I'll hold the fort, don't worry. So this is a prime example of being put out of your comfort zone, by the way, guys. So I love doing a live, as you can tell. And this sort of bit of paper in front of me is all the questions to Brian, in case you wonder what I'm looking at. But I just think that at times we're all guilty of that sort of just medicate the feelings. I don't want to feel something, so I'll medicate it. That could be watching Netflix because you don't want to think. It could be taking an external substance like, I don't know, it could be drinking a coffee. It could be drinking alcohol. It could be any of that stuff that changes your state or your mind so you don't have to feel whatever it is you're trying to hide from. And sometimes that can be the anxious feelings. Sometimes that can be the I'm not good enough, which happens to us all at times, which is linked to your imposter syndrome. And certainly you start a new role or you start a new anything new in life, you get a lot of that imposter syndrome. Who am I to be doing this? They're so much better than me. So this has all got a point to it, and I was really just filling time, but actually it really links nicely, Brian, into the question I've got for you, and that is, do you think people should be just not taking medication then? The question is, should people be taking medication?
Or should people just keep on pushing through? I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, I think that there's when we look at medicating ourselves, ultimately the reason that we use any medication is to change how we feel. So You know, and it's okay to change how we feel. Ultimately, you know, obviously, you know, Jason, you're somebody who's hugely interested in fitness and physical fitness and all these different things, as well as mental fitness. But physical fitness is your thing, and I know that because we've talked about it before. You know that if you had a stressful day or something like that, that one of your medications is to go for a run or to work out or to go up, you know, the hills with Ferguson and go for a walk and go for a run.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's a medication, and ultimately it changes how you feel. So as we go through this wee chat here, I think it's important to say that medication comes in lots of different forms, and that there's a distinction between how you work it, because there are people, and Jason, you probably know a few of them, who would use fitness, but it stops becoming a positive and it actually becomes something that they're maybe doing too much of.
Yes.
You know, and they're
yeah. Oh, Brian's slipped out again. Or is he still going? Oh, and he slipped off there again. That was on my other device. So yeah, but as he's going to come back in, he is having some connection issues. He's absolutely right, by the way. I do use exercise as a form of escapism, if you like, and a way to feel better. But what Brian was saying there is the typical model of somebody that's overdoing the exercise. And you'll all see these, and you call it, there could be the 3 classes a day type. Is this what you mean, Brian?
absolutely.
And they don't look well for it, though, at the end of it. You know, they'll not be eating properly as a result. Exactly. They're spending too much time working out. And actually what happens is you go the other way. So it starts with what's a positive habit, and it actually becomes something else. So, yeah.
That's it. Isn't it? I mean, how many? I know so many. I remember my wife took up running. I've not actually. I'm about to talk about this live on here, right enough. But I have bought all my kit, mate. After me saying to you quite a few times, I don't know about running. I don't know about running. Lockdown is basically means I have to do something. I'm going mental. I don't like doing weights in the house, which is my usual type of workout. I don't know. It just doesn't. It's just a faff. You know, I much prefer going to a gym. It's all there for me. I just pick it up. I just do it. It's great. So I've got all my running stuff, but I remember when my wife started running a few years ago, many years ago now, I remember saying to her that one of my worries was that she was going to get that runner's physique when they just run too much. And as you say, they don't eat
properly. What's a runner's physique? Do tell.
Super skinny, zero body fat, sort of, but also no muscle mass. Just like so thin, you know, and it just doesn't look healthy. Yeah.
I like this one, Brian, because Usain Bolt's a runner. For example,
exactly.
And then you've got Mo Farah's a runner. So it depends where your mind goes. But so when I think of a runner, because I'm into more shorter distance sprinting, I tend to think of those types first. Yeah. It just, you know, but it's interesting to know you think more of the ultra marathon, the more slender sort of side of runner.
That's it. That's kind of I kind of go to, and it was like I think there's just some people that just run, as you say, they're not taking care of themselves in other places. They go for a run as their drug, but then what they're not doing is balancing it off by eating or having the right nutrition on the other side to keep themselves healthy. Yeah. And that can happen with any type of exercise. You know, that you could probably go the flip side, which is the people in the gym who are just pure muscle, who might even be kind of, you know, doing some sort of like steroids or something like that just to pump themselves up. Anyway, this was not about fitness, it was about drugs. Yeah. And the point here is that I'm trying to make, I suppose, and just getting caught in that wee rabbit hole there of myself and my own wee stories, is that it's all about how healthy that approach is for you. You know, you can drink alcohol and be perfectly healthy, functioning citizen of the world and be absolutely okay. And it's all right to, you know, have a stressful week and want to have a beer at the end of the night or a beer at the weekend or whatever it is, a glass of wine. What happens is that it becomes something more than that. And when it starts to become something more than that, that's when it starts to become an issue. And so in terms of medication, we can look at it a lot of different ways. But what I will just drop in here, and there's on our YouTube channel, we've actually got a bigger video on this, on mental health medication and whether it's good or bad. I genuinely believe that even when we get into that, any medication is good as long as you realize that it's not a cure. And what it is it's something that's holding you up and making you feel a little bit different while you deal with whatever you need to deal with. If you need to deal with a stressful day, having a really good workout can hold you up just long enough that when you come out of it, you've kind of changed your state and you feel better. For something like a big mental health problem, that antidepressant or whatever it might be, that can hold you up, just long enough. But then the big thing is about going and getting therapy, going and getting help, going and talking to someone about what's going on, because the drug itself is not going to cure you. And that classes for anything at all, pretty much, is the drug is not going to cure you. All it's doing is it's holding you up. What has to happen is there has to be a change in here for it to shift.
Right, that is exactly the point I want to get to then. So we've discussed a lot about what doesn't work, if you like, or what can work, or can be, I suppose, a sticking plaster, if you want to call some of the drugs a sticking plaster. But what I'd really like to know, I suppose, then, is what is the answer? How do you fix your mental health without taking drugs? That's the title of the session.
There it is.
Chunk at the end here. Hopefully you get no cut off on this part, because this is the real meat on the bone stuff we're going for now. So how do you do it, Brian?
Okay, so basically going back to what we said earlier on, this comes back to this inside out process. Mm-hmm. So as you said, mate, what we've worked out is that it's not the outside world, it's the meaning that I put on it. That when I look, for instance, at pushing through, that I can only do that for a certain length of time before I'm going to get tired. I can only hold that for so long if I don't deal with what's in here. And then in terms of the drugs, they're holding me up, and that's okay. I just want to really stress that if you're on like a medication from your doctor, keep going. That's fine. The question is what are you doing as well as that to sort out what's in your head? Because again, you're not sick. You're not got an illness. That's not like a sore head where you take the paracetamol and it goes away or whatever it is. What we need to do is we need to change the inside. But what you now have to do is you have to understand, and this goes right back to the start when we talked about mechanics of the mind.
Yeah.
The issue with counselling and traditional counselling, because there's lots of now more modern versions of counselling, but traditional person-centred counselling is that all it did was it dealt with the external world. You talked about your story. You sometimes tied it into how you felt about your story, but that was it. It was all very much about here's how the world has affected me and here's how I've impacted on the world. You get something like CBT, which I really love, cognitive behavioural therapy, but it's got a lot of homework, a lot of self-analysis, which can be a good thing. But again, sometimes people can struggle to catch the connection between the homework that they're being asked to do and how that's going to make them feel better, because there's a lot of analysis of the problem. What we need to do is we just need to change our thinking. And I know you've heard me do this example a million times, but if you think about chewing lemons, if you imagine like chewing on a big piece of lemon, then your mouth will start to water.
Gets me every time.
Absolutely, still gets me. I've been doing it for years.
I know you're doing it.
Exactly. It's like I know what I'm doing, and it still gets me. But when you imagine chewing on lemons, then your mouth starts to water. And the reason that happens is because your mind isn't working necessarily in the outside world, it's working in its inside world. If we were outside in, right, what should happen when I mention lemons is that everybody should go, that's really interesting, lemons. But that's not what happens. For many people, not for everybody, but for many people, their mouth starts to water because it's inside they think about lemons. So, as an example, let's replace the lemon. I might know from the outside world and my evidence process might show me that I am good enough. I might get praise from my boss or praise from my lecturers and my tutors in college, or my parents might say that I'm the best person that they've ever met. My girlfriend, my boyfriend, whoever it is, might say that they love me dearly. That's great. And that all comes in. But if that little picture on the inside of my head is running, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, just like the lemon, that's the one that my mind is going to listen to. And that's what needs to change. And if we can change someone's internal world, so if we can change that thought, if we can get that out of that person's head, it transforms their whole life. Because if you imagine something like I'm not good enough, what it does is that, in fact, let me rewind a little bit. What people quite often come to me with and come to our company with is the idea, and a lot of young people think this, in fact, just a lot of people think this, not just young people, is that they've got a million problems. like I'm falling out with my girlfriend or my boyfriend, like college is going crap, I keep on arguing with my parents or with whoever, I'm not doing well in my job, blah, 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 blah. And they see all these things as separate and different because they're looking outside themselves and seeing them as different, but the constant is them. And if you think about now going back inside that person's head, they then run, I'm not good enough. And it's that is the problem. Because how that shows up with their girlfriend or boyfriend or partner is that what happens is that they then either think that they're going to leave me any minute, so they act like that, or perhaps they get a wee bit too clingy because they think, oh my God, I've got someone now, or even they stay in a relationship they should have got out of bloody ages ago. Because it's like, if I lose this person, I'm not good enough to get another one, so this person will do. Then what happens is that if we go into work, they're now maybe not going for the promotion that they should be going for, or they're holding themselves back, or their performance is a bit rubbish because they don't believe they're good enough. They argue with their lecturers and or they don't do well in college because they don't really apply themselves, because why would I? Because I'm just going to fail anyway. If we change that thought, I'm not good enough, all of that collapses. And that stuff is not stuck in your head. We accept that we can change negatively in a heartbeat. So the example I use quite often, like this is, in fact, I'm going to use a horrible one. Prepare yourselves, everybody. If anybody knows what the word emetophobia is, then you might want to turn your Facebook down just for a wee second, but I'm going to keep it very brief and I'm not going to make it very dramatic. But if you were to imagine like you've been going to a restaurant for 10 years, and every time you go to that restaurant, you love it. It's like your favorite place in the world. But then you go once and the service is really crap. And after you leave, I'll do the gentle version after, actually. And after you leave, you get a really horrible dose of food poisoning. Like instantly, you can be going, I'm not going back there. I'm never going back there. You've been for 10 years. You've eaten hundreds of meals in this place and it's been perfect. But one meal, and if it's got a strong enough reaction to you, boom, all of a sudden you're like, I'm never going back. We can accept that we can change like that in a heartbeat, but we never accept that that can happen positively. We never accept that that can happen the other way around, that actually all of a sudden we can realize that we are good enough, or that actually that people do love us, or that we're not alone, or that we can be confident. And I'm not saying it happens quite like that, but does that make sense? You know what I mean? It's like that kind of thing where if you change that thinking immediately, in our wee example earlier, I change, if I could help that person change that thinking, and now I'm not saying that they're walking into work going, I'm the best thing ever, but if we can just get them to trust themselves and to believe in themselves a wee bit more, now they look at their relationship and either they change it or they now be themselves. In work, all of a sudden they're applying themselves because they're going, well, I can be aspirational, I can believe in myself. In college, they're now trying because they're like, I really want to do this and I believe in myself and I know that I can. And all of their relationships and their friendships, they now know that they're loved and cared for. So now they act like someone who belongs rather than, oh, well, I'm just somebody they invite along because they feel sorry for me. And all of a sudden it shifts. But what you have to do is you have to get into that thinking first. So, and that is where therapy comes in.
Yeah, what you were saying, I'm just looking at some of the comments that have come in as well, Brian. Gillian was just saying there, it's very hard to change your mindset when thinking like that. So it was obviously when you were playing the negative patterns inside your head.
Yep.
And at that point, yeah, it's very hard to change your mindset in that. Now, and I mean, I'm calling it a movie that's playing, okay? I know it's an interesting way, but I'm quite a visual person. So, and tell me, feel free to jump at any point, but if I'm playing that movie in my head, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm seeing that here. I'm seeing that in big, bold, bright colours right at the forefront of my here. That's what I'm seeing. I'm not good enough. So would it be fair to say that, by turning down the volume on that picture, by making it like less vibrant and, changing the contrast and making it further away, that would be one of the techniques that you would use through NLP. It's one of the techniques I would use through NLP to what we call shrink the problem.
Absolutely.
And because that's essentially what you're trying to do here. You're trying, like I said, I did some videos recently for the website, and I think I discussed it on there about my favorite thing when I work with people is they come in with 99 problems. There's a song in that.
There's a song there.
They come with 99 problems, but they leave with one. There you go.
Yes. I like it, man. I like that.
Or none, sorry. But what I'm trying to say to explain to everybody what I mean by that is everybody comes in thinking they've got a million problems, okay?
Yep.
And actually, they're all compounded on top of one another. And actually, if you hit the keystone in the bridge, the pearl in the necklace, and you explode it, bang, everything else up the chain disappears as a result. And
that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, I get why Gillian's, saying it's very hard to change your mindset when you're thinking like that. And it is. And that's one of the issues, is that when somebody's thinking like that is actually sometimes the worst place to try and get in and change it. It's so, because so if somebody's having an anxiety attack, for instance, that's not the time to be doing therapy. Once they've calmed down and they're reflecting on it, that's the time to start doing the therapy. So what I would say is that, and Jason, you're absolutely right. I mean, you're knocking it here. I think there's this idea of shrinking the problem. So you could just very simply just change the colors and the shapes and push it away. Something like I'm not good enough quite often can become a little bit sort of intertwined through someone's whole life. It's wrapped around lots of things. It becomes part of their identity, as you said earlier, all of these things. The thing I would say to everybody that's watching this, if you resonate with this, and by the way, this isn't just about I'm not good enough. This can be about I've lost hope. Nothing's going to get any better. I'm pure rubbish. This can be about I'm addicted to all of these things. You kind of lose your light at the end of the tunnel. You've learned to be like this. This is what we mean by you're not broken. This is what I mean is this is not something that you are. It's something that you're doing. This is not, you are not an anxious person. You are somebody who is being anxious. And the reason you're being anxious is because of these mechanics that are running in your head. So the I'm not good enough thing didn't just pop in your head out of nowhere. You were taught this. I was talking to someone earlier on, and it was more of a coaching thing, and I only had an hour with them. So I had to be careful with how much I gave them a push. But I did ask them to consider at the end. They basically kept on saying, they even came on the call saying, I do all the crap that nobody else wants to do. And all they kept on talking about was all the rubbish and this is rubbish. And I don't really know if this is the career for me and this is rubbish and blah, blah, blah. And I actually called her out on it at the end. And I said, you know how many times you've just told me about all the rubbish that's happening? But then she told me, and this is coincidentally, that in another part of her life, she's this fitness instructor who's mad passionate about fitness and all of these different things. And what I said to her was, if I sat down next to you in a random dinner, you didn't know me, and I turned around and asked you about what you did, I was like, would you tell me about fitness? And she's like, probably not. She's like, but she's like, if I had a couple of drinks, I'd talk about it all night because I love it and I'm dead passionate about it. But she hid it because she worried that other people would judge her for the fact that she was passionate in this thing. So she hid this whole side of herself. And I gave her this, as I said to right at the end, I said, here's what I want you to think about. Where did that thought come from? Because somewhere in your past, someone has taught you to hide that. So from a point of view of I'm not good enough, if you're resonating with that as you listen to this today, something in your past has happened to teach you that you're not good enough. And it's hard to let that go until you deal with that. And as soon as you deal with that, it can disappear in a heartbeat. As soon as you realize that little 10-year-old you that get pushed out, sorry for this, this could get people looking for the eyes if we hit this here, mate. I said all of a sudden, people are like, I'm just getting on for a fun talk. But if you, when you were 10 years old, were pushed out of a friendship group, if at 15 years old, someone broke your heart and now you can't trust someone in relationships, if all of a sudden what happened was that you had, which I call the recipe for a perfectionist, which is every time you went home to your mum or your dad, you went, Mum, Dad, I got 9 out of 10 in the test, and whoever it was went, which one did you get wrong? I was second in the race. Who won? How far behind were you? You know, that constant just indicator of you're not good enough, you're not there, you're not good enough. Then you've been trained in this. And as soon as you realize that you from back there isn't the you of today, it genuinely can be life-changing. It can be transformational. It's not just about going, oh, my friends ousted me at 10 like counselling would, and going, it was so emotional and I was only a primary 5 and it took me years to make new friends, and just going into that in loads of detail and how difficult it was and how you never felt close to them. That's fine, but that's not helping you. What's helping you is realising that wee 10-year-old you had a right to feel hurt. But by putting the shield up, for instance, isn't actually helped them. And that now where you are is you're someone who has to get to a point where you realise that you is not the you of today, and that you can set yourself free from that. And I genuinely believe, as long as it's not a psychiatric issue, as we said at the beginning, you can change anything. Phobias, fears, I'm not good enough, limiting beliefs, you can change it all. I'm not always saying that's easy. The process is simple. I could explain it to you like I have done today really simply, but you have to be brave enough to take that step. And I think I can't do any mental health talk without saying that the most important thing to do to help yourself change is to tell someone that you're struggling, because nobody can help you if they don't know. And if you find that, if you don't have anybody around, I know that you've got Jason and the team at the college, so just reach out to anyone, and don't expect them all to be able to absolutely make everything better. But just what you are surrounded by is a team of people who might be able to hold you up and maybe even be the medication until they signpost you to where you can get the help. And I know I've mentioned things like counselling and CBT, but if that's all you can afford and that's all you can get, go for it, because there's still really good therapies. They just take a bit longer than other ones. And if you don't want to reach out to college, then as I always say, at the end of these, which is always potentially a recipe for disaster, reach out to us at Headstrong. We don't know us, and we'll signpost you, and we'll say, well, you can go here, you can go here, you can go here, and we'll show you where you can go for some really good quality help. And it doesn't all cost.
I'll cut in on that one, Brian, just now, because I think it's a really important one, just to kind of give the for the students that are watching, the correct advice and sort of signaling and stuff. So you've got the full student services department that have got all our counsellors in house there. So of course, come to myself as well, the learner engagement team. But from there, we'll signpost you in relation to what you actually need. So there's for a student at Dundee Angus College, there's a whole range of services available to them. You're part of the DNA family. Just talk, just talk, and we'll get you in the right direction. I know it's difficult just now as well, because a lot of the work that's done is a corridor chat. You bump into someone, you have the coffee with them, and that's where the stuff comes out. Don't have that in this world. We're online, so it's going to take an effort, to come from behind that computer screen and say, that you're struggling. But don't let that be an excuse, and just talk it out, get it out of your head, and let somebody else kind of come in and help with that. Definitely.
If I can just jump in there as well, Jason, and just make that even easier, I would say that you're absolutely right. And there is also the opportunities in this current world, because at the moment, which we don't normally have, is we know that everybody's on their computer and everybody's checking their email.
True.
So if it's easier for you to not speak it out loud, because sometimes that can be the most difficult thing, if it's just the first step, is just sending an email, and it doesn't have to be detailed. Nobody's asking for your life story. That, as Jason said, that if you trust Jason or somebody else in the learning engagement team or whoever it is, if you just feel that you've got a connection with them, they're not the person to help, but they might be the person who can help you meet the person who helps. So just even an email that says, by the way, watch that video, I'm struggling a wee bit just now. And that's it. It's just 10 words, push send, it's done. And the hardest step is done. And then after that, it just becomes about, going along with it. It's just breaking that thing where you just open. And as soon as that does, if it helps anybody, by the way, you have to tell the other person that you're doing this. If it helps anyone, the other one I like speaking about is the emoji trigger. So basically what you do is you choose an emoji. So one that I quite often suggest to people is the wee like flashing light, like the wee siren one. I think it's a wee red one on an Apple, on an iPhone anyway. But is that all you need to do is choose an emoji? I normally say to teenagers, for instance, when I work in schools, to choose the most ridiculous emoji you can think of. Like whatever it is, one that you'd never use, like the house or the flamenco dancer woman or something like that. Or something like that. And that's all you need to send. And the other person, if they get that, they know that what you're saying is, I could do with somebody to talk to. I need someone. And it takes seconds to send, because what you want to do is you need to get out of your own way. And sometimes you need something that's as quick as the drug, because the drug's easy to have, but it's just like, it's like that very quick thing that before you know it's sent, so you don't have to think about it. And somebody on the other side, but you need to tell the other person that that's what it is. If you just send somebody the flamenco dancer and you don't tell them, they'll be like, I have no idea what this is. What is that? So it's something you need to set up. But, you know, if I ever send you this emoji, or even just say, if I ever send you a random emoji and it's just on its own, can you send me a text back and just make sure I'm all right? And it's as simple as that. It's just about engineering your world. So I hope that people can find that help.
I think that's absolutely brilliant, Brian. Actually, for once, we're actually on time as well. But we've explored a lot there today. And what I would say is a lot of Brian sent over a whole load of videos, which I'll be sharing on the Facebook page all week as part of refreshers. But I'll also just go across to Brian just now, just so he can tell you where you can maybe get more information on some of this stuff. So, Brian, you're online, you're on social media.
Yep, absolutely. So if you want to find us, we are Headstrong Minds everywhere. So YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, we're Headstrong_Minds, but you'd still be able to find us. On Twitter, we're Headstrong Mind 5, because someone else has got Headstrong Minds, but we're rubbish on Twitter anyway, so don't worry about that. And headstrongminds.com. If you go to Amazon, if you've been interested in especially what we're talking about today, I've got 2 books out. As well. This one, Breakthrough, which is very much about what we've been talking about today. This covers a lot of the stuff about drugs and pushing yourself through. And then if you happen to own a teenager, so if you're a parent or you work with young people, then this one, Cracking the Teen Code, which is all about the teenage mindset, but it's more about how to work with it. So if you're a teenager, you can absolutely read it, but it's more designed for like parents and people who want to help other people with the teenage mindset. But there's a lot in there if you're a teenager that you'd understand as well. And if anybody's interested in loving this and wants even more, actually tonight so I run 2 companies. I run Headstrong, and then we've got a training company, which is called the Scottish Centre of NLP, which on Facebook is just Scottish Centre of NLP, and we will be live on there at 6:30 tonight for a wee 45-minute session on the 3 keys to personal transformation. And if you miss it, or if you're watching this on replay, then that will be recorded. So you can just jump over 45-minute session on the 3 things that you need to change to be able to change your life, which are negative emotions, limiting beliefs, which we've talked a little bit about, and the strategies that you run. So you see some similarities to today, but it's a very different take, and you'll get to meet Steve. So come and find us, follow us, send us a wee message, say hello. We'd love to hear from you. And I thank you very much for inviting me along.
No, you've been absolutely brilliant, Brian. It's been great. Just, an hour's never long enough, is it? We could take one of these topics and go on an hour on one of them alone. But absolutely, I've just to advocate Brian's books. I've read the first one, and I've read most of the second one. I don't own a teenager, so I dipped in and out of that. But no, absolutely, and it's put really simplistically as well. A lot of the models we spoke about to do with thoughts and feelings. I think there's a really nice model in there that talks about that as well. Guys, everything's happening here on the DA Student Wellbeing page. So this evening we've got our after hours college, which is going to be starting at 6 o'clock. So that's going to be kicking off shortly once I've walked the dogs. And then at 7 o'clock, we're going to be doing our sound bath, which I believe Brian's going to have a look at later on after his live over on the
Look, in fact, right next to me just now, I've even got my own singing bowl. That's it. There you go. I've got my own wee singing bowl here. Honestly, they are amazing. And get good headphones on, the best headphones you have, because you just I don't know how well it's going to come through Facebook. If you get a chance to do one live, they're amazing, and I hope that it comes through on Facebook. They're just the most lovely experience.
Well, that's the rest of the evening for this evening, and then just tune into the page tomorrow morning, guys, and the full schedule will be up for Thursday and Friday. But you've got all the details there for Brian, so please get in touch if you need to. And yeah, it's been an absolute delight. So thank you once more, Brian Costello from Headstrong. And we'll wish everybody a good evening. And but before you go, you didn't swear again. Oh, it was only the first one.
See, no. See, that's no, I won't.
Some of the comments doubted you as well, but hey ho, you did a good job.
Exactly. No,
Take care.
No problem.
So yeah, virtual wave. See you later. Bye bye. Cheers.